Yo, what's going on, fam, out there? Happy to be back with another episode of the Cannabis Diversity Report. Today, I have my good friend Naomi Granger, the founder of the National Association of Cannabis Accounting and Tax Professionals. Naomi, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, it's absolutely a pleasure to have you here. It's actually I think that what you do is so important in the industry. Finance, accounting, making sure that people have good bookkeeping, is something that's so critical to the industry and that people really need to learn and hear about. So I'm super excited to have you share. And being somebody that comes from finance, I always love these conversations.
Awesome.
So, tell the people out there listening a little bit about yourself. What do you do with the association and really your journey? How'd you get into the cannabis industry?
Yeah, so my background is in accounting. I've got over 15 years of public and corporate accounting. I'm a CPA as well as an MBA. And then it got to a point where I was tired of reporting to an office or a cubicle, and I really wanted to have a remote lifestyle, a remote job. This was long before COVID hit, but I just knew that there was a way that I can do something online. And it got to a point about 4 years ago where I thought I was going to just have to learn a new skill set. And so I stopped working with corporate. I saved up some money and I started taking online courses and online classes, learning social media marketing, online marketing, and different things like that, just trying to figure out what I can do that will give me the lifestyle that I wanted, which was working from home, working from my computer, or from wherever I am in the world. And then I came across a online training program that showed me how to build an online remote accounting firm, which my 15 years of accounting was always in an office or a cubicle under somebody's stack of papers. I never even thought that I could do accounting remotely. And so I signed up for this program. And one of the main things that it taught me in the program was you need to pick one niche and become an expert in that one niche in order to really grow your firm and grow your practice. And so I bounced around and I tried a couple of different niches. Nothing really stood out to me. And then I learned about cannabis. And then I started learning more about how underserved the market was, how highly regulated the market was, and how much confusion there was in this industry for cannabis. And I thought it would be a great direction for me to go. And then I just never turned back. And so once I made the decision that I was going to start working with cannabis clients, I landed within that first couple of weeks, I landed my first couple of clients and I started working on their books and records. And then I started getting a lot of other accountants who were in the same program with me, wanting to learn more about this specific niche. And so then I expanded out and started teaching about cannabis accounting to other accountants. And then it just kind of took off from there. And so now it's 4 years later, and I've been in the cannabis industry, speaking all over the country, featured in tons of different publications, and just getting the message out there and trying to figure out how to get this industry more regulated and get more information out there so that business owners can know what they need to do, as well as the accountants who are helping those business owners know exactly what they need to do to make sure that that company is compliant, and they don't end up losing their license, getting their doors shut, or anything like that.
Right, and I think that's something that is dope also because not only are you helping people as an accounting professional yourself, but from the beginning you've always really focused on like training other accountants and educating. What made that important to you? Why is educating others something that's really so important and not just being focused on your own success?
Yeah, because when I was in the process of trying to figure out what I was going to do and what type of remote business I was going to do, I saw that there is a lot of value in the education space and online education. And I saw that there's this huge shift towards people, leaving, not deciding to go to university and taking online courses and learning specific skill sets. So I knew that there was a huge need there. And then this is the biggest market in the country. And so many accountants, I've talked to thousands of accountants, and just about every single one was introduced to cannabis from me because they didn't know that this was, they never even considered cannabis an industry that they can go into. They thought it was illegal. There's no banking. They may get in trouble. They may lose their license. There's still a lot of unknowns out there. And so I felt like it's important. These business owners need help, and they need people who understand their industry and their business to help them, because I've seen way too many people where I come in and their books are totally messed up because they have a non-cannabis accountant trying to apply other industry tactics and skill sets to the cannabis industry, which it doesn't apply. You can't do things the same way. It's a completely different industry. And so I feel like the word needs to get out there. And there's also a great opportunity for accountants, because a lot of the bigger accounting firms aren't even in this space. So you're not going to see the big four. You're not going to see some of the mid-tier accounting firms. There's just a lot of people who are just not servicing this industry. And so I feel like this is a great opportunity for entrepreneurs to kind of get themselves started, get their businesses off the ground before, it becomes federally legal. And then all the bigger players come in. You're going to have a nice solid book of business. You're going to have a nice skill set, so that when these businesses do come in, they may reach out to you for consultation so that you can help them understand what you've been doing for the last 3 years that they've been, staying out of the market, or the last 5 years. So I feel like it's just a great opportunity. And I want to make sure that as many entrepreneurs out there are able to take advantage of it.
Right. And that I think you made up a very good point, because cannabis is something that's so highly regulated. There's 280E, there's so many different things that don't apply to other cannabis businesses. So if you don't have somebody that really understands a specific niche, you can end up like not only in owing a lot of money, but in legal trouble. Could you talk about some of the biggest problems or challenges that you see cannabis business owners facing, like when it comes to an accounting or bookkeeping perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of times first of all, they have a hard time getting a bank account. And so it's very difficult to operate a multi-million-dollar business cash, because when you see these cannabis stores, the person goes into business to sell cannabis. So they know everything about the plant. They may know everything about retail sales or growing the plant and things like that. But they did not know that they were opening a bank. And a lot of these businesses have to have a safe or a vault on site where they are accepting cash, and they have to understand how to allocate this cash. Just because we got $1,000 in doesn't mean we have $1,000 to spend. They have to understand that part of that has to go towards sales taxes, part of that has to go towards payroll, part of that has to go towards rent and things like that. And so they have these bud tenders, or young people who are working in the store, not really understanding what it takes to run a bank and run a vault and make sure that the cash is completely accounted for and properly allocated, so that they're able to make all of their bills and pay all of their taxes. And so they really need strong cash procedures in place, and they also need really strong inventory management procedures in place. So those are one of the two first things that I try to implement when I get into clients and start working with clients, and as well as my accountants. I help them understand that you need to get the cash under control, because there's no way to know what's happening without having transactions flowing through a bank account. So yeah, that's one of the biggest things, is just navigating when you don't have a bank account. How do you run and operate a multi-million-dollar business?
Right. And speaking of that, running a multi-million-dollar business, a lot of people look at the cannabis industry or come into it, talking about the generational wealth opportunities. But what a lot of people don't realize is that the amount of taxes that cannabis business owners pay due to 280E. Could you talk about what that is, like the reason, like for that in the tax code, and just kind of explain to people what you actually bring home, potentially, like when people have cannabis businesses?
Yeah, a lot of people think that these people are making money hand over fist and they're just, living a good life. But most of the businesses that are operating legally are just barely breaking even. If not, they may be operating in the negative. And so it's important that they are highly capitalized so that they can ride the wave of regulation. And so I'm just going to take a step back and kind of break it down. 280E is just a tax code that was implemented in I think the 80s or so, that prohibits anybody who's trafficking a Schedule 1 controlled substance. So marijuana is still listed as, well, with high THC, is still listed as a Schedule 1 controlled substance. So if you are selling trafficking, a Schedule 1 controlled substance, you are not allowed to take any operating expenses. You're still required to pay taxes, but you have to pay taxes on your gross receipts. And so when you're looking at a financial statement, a profit and loss statement, the way it breaks down is you have your revenue. So this is your sales. This is all the money that came in. And then beneath your revenue, you have your cost. So you subtract that. So you sold a pound and it cost you sold a pound for $3,500 and it cost you $1,500 to buy that pound in order to sell that pound of flour. And so you have your revenue of $3,500, you have your $1,500 of cost, and then your gross receipts is $2,000. So that's the amount of money you actually made for selling that product, because that's the money that you made after you've paid for it. So you have gross receipts of $2,000, but once you with the gross receipts of $2,000, there's other costs associated with selling that plant. So you had to pay for rent for whatever location you're housed in. You had to pay payroll for your payroll for your employees. You had to pay utilities. You had to pay marketing. You had to pay your attorney's fees, your accounting fees. There's a number of they're called operating expenses that goes into selling that 1 pound of flour. What happens with normal businesses is, you sell the thing for $3,500, you have $1,500 of cost, and then you may have another $1,000 of operating expenses. And so then you're only paying taxes on the $1,000 remaining after all of your expenses. Well, it doesn't work that way with cannabis. You have your $3,500 of sales, $1,500 of cost, and you pay taxes on that $2,000. So you're actually paying taxes on money that you don't have. They call that phantom income, because you're paying taxes on $2,000, but you had $1,000 of expenses, of other operating expenses that you have to pay. You're paying taxes on, and you're paying the expenses. So you're paying taxes on another $1,000 of money that you don't have because it went out the door for payroll or utilities or rent or whatever have you. And so that's the reason why cannabis companies are in such a tight space, because their effective tax rate is in excess of 70% of their revenue. And so you're paying 70% in taxes. And I'm just kind of breaking down what your federal tax looks like. Now you got to think about, you have state taxes. You have marijuana retail sales tax for dispensaries. You have your excise tax. You have your payroll taxes. There's just so many taxes. You have your state taxes, your local taxes, your transit taxes, your city taxes. There's so many taxes that they have to pay and that you have to be registered for. And then on top of that, you have to keep your license. You have to pay high registration fees, annual registration fees to the tune of $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 just to keep your license every single year. They have high fees that they have to pay to the bank. So if you are able to get banking and you're making these large deposits, the banks are going to start asking for, higher fees, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month just to maintain your bank account. And so these legal cannabis businesses just have a lot of taxes, really high fees, and just all this regulation is causing them to just be in a space where they're just break even. So if this is a space that you want to go into, there is the opportunity to create generational wealth. However, you have to be able to ride the wave. So you have to be heavily capitalized. You need to have the money in place to ride the wave of regulation, and also make sure you have sound books and records, because I feel like down the road, once this does become federally legal, everybody's going to be jumping on board. All of your alcohol companies, all of your tobacco companies are going to want to buy. There's going to be mergers and acquisitions and consolidations, which actually is already going on. And if you have the best books and records in place, you're able to demand the highest valuations and the highest prices down the road, so that you can have those big buyouts and then have that money for generational wealth in the future.
Right. And speaking of the impact of regulations, the Safe Banking Act just passed again in the House and was introduced in the Senate yesterday. How do you think something like the Safe Banking Act could, positively impact cannabis businesses?
Yeah, banking is one of the number one issues that cause cannabis to be messy. We have so many businesses that have had their bank accounts closed, their POS systems closed, and everything. They're not able to do things. So imagine trying to run a business and you're 3 months in, and then your bank account closes. Now you have to try to find another. You have a lull, maybe a couple of weeks to a month or so lull, where you're just working with this cash, trying to figure out where to put it, trying to open an account, but in that same time, you're running your business, so you don't have any coverage over what's happening with that cash, and you don't have solid cash procedures in place because you had a bank account. And so we've had clients who've had bank accounts closed, 3 or 4 different bank accounts, and we're trying to follow the cash and follow the money and figure out what happened. And then because the bank accounts won't bank this business, other businesses won't bank this, won't service this business. So different processors, POS systems and merchant processors won't service this business. So you have a hard time with tracking all of your sales because you don't have any software that's tracking it for you. And then other service providers won't take your business because they're afraid that they're going to get even though they're not touching the plant, they're afraid that they're going to get their own bank account shut down because they're accepting money from the business. So getting the banks open will just will change everything. You'll be able to track your expenses. You'll be able to track your sales. You'll be able to, get services from different service providers that we're not able to get. It helps not only the accountant, it helps the business owner, and it helps these regulators who are trying to heavily regulate this business. Because when you don't have a bank account, if the IRS comes to you and audits you and says that you have, a significant amount of back taxes and penalties, they're not able to levy a bank account to collect on that. So they can tell you have this huge tax bill, but then they just got to wait for you to be able to make that cash payment to them in order to pay this tax bill. So it's just going to, sit on you. But yeah, they're not even able to levy a bank account. So it's just, it'll just open things up if they're able to open up the banking, and especially it'll be nice if they can open up the banking, but since it's still federally illegal, I highly doubt that the banking bill will pass, to be honest, only because the banks would have to implement some type of closed looped system. Because, if you open up pass the Safe Banking Act, Chase is not able to accept interstate transactions because it's not legal in all states. And so that's one of the bigger issues, is that you can't sell, you can't grow in California and sell to Oregon. There's no interstate transactions allowed. So the same thing with banking. And that's the reason why you can't use credit cards either, because they are national networks. And so that will open the doors for interstate sales, which is something that's not allowed yet. So that would need to be passed. All of that would need to be opened. And I'm not really sure if they go into that detail in the Safe Banking Act to make interstate sales available. But that's one of the bigger issues, that since it's still state legal and not federally legal, you can't really have those transactions. And so they may pass it. And if they don't, if interstate sales is still not available, the banks would have to issue. It's really costly for these banks to become compliant and to create this closed loop system, or implement the software and get the people in place in order to regulate this business. So the banks that are out there that are servicing this industry, they're slowly letting people on and adding new cannabis clients, because it's very expensive for them to service and manage these clients. And that's the reason why cannabis businesses are paying such significant fees for the banking that they are being provided with.
Right. And that makes perfect sense when you think about it. Like when you talk about, like, even if Safe Banking were to be implemented, like you said, it's going to take a lot of work before you ever want to go in Bank of America or Wells Fargo or something like that and get a cannabis account.
Yeah. It's crazy. I'm enjoying the ride. I'm enjoying seeing this unfold in the regulation, but I never would have known what it takes, like all these different moving parts and pieces to bring on, make an industry legal.
Right. Absolutely. And so with that being said, talk a little bit about the National Association of Cannabis Accounting and Tax Professionals. You're training people to do something that's very much needed in the industry. Like, what are some of the, talk a little bit about the association, because I know that's a relatively new venture. You started it last year, I believe.
Mhm.
So, tell me how it came about, and, what are some of the ways that you are training and preparing accounting professionals for the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much. So, yeah, for the last 4 years, I've actually been teaching accountants with cannabis accounting. And just recently, I realized just from the feedback, I've worked with over 600 accountants. And from the feedback from these accountants, I felt like there was more that was needed. Cannabis is the only industry, it's the biggest industry in the country right now, but there are no industry guides. We don't have any guidelines on how to do things properly in this industry. If you were to go to oil and gas, you will have there's a ton of guys that you can pull down and different things that you can follow so that you can understand that you're doing their equity properly, you're doing their debt properly, you're doing their costs properly, they're recognizing revenue properly. So there's just a lot of things that you see in every other industry, but cannabis just doesn't have it in place yet. And so we see a lot of these companies that we see these court cases and they're getting in trouble with the IRS and different things. However, there's not really, we don't know what's right and what's wrong until something goes through the court of law and it passes a court of law. Well, things have happened so rapidly. Like all the court cases that I've referenced, during my career are old. Like they were just decided maybe in 2018, 2019, but they were auditing tax years 2012. And since 2012, so much has changed in the landscape. Back in 2012, we didn't have any adult use. 2012 was the first year that I think Colorado and Washington in November passed the laws to actually offer adult use for the first time. So, since then, now we have 15 states that are offering adult use. We've had three different administrations since 2012. And when Trump was in office, he completely overhauled the tax code. So there's new tax guidance that's in place that was issued and effective December 2017. So there's a lot of things that have happened, and we don't have any guidance on how can we apply that effectively to cannabis client companies and make sure that they're in compliance, but they're not paying, they're not overpaying in taxes. And so I felt like the association was important to put in place so that we can start building that guidance, partnering with the right people. So I actually, the association has partnered with the IRS, and we just had a talk with the commissioner over the Small Business and Self-Employment Tax Division yesterday. So we just had a talk with them yesterday. The whole association was invited, and asking them those questions like, how do we implement 471C, which is a new tax code that was passed with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which is what Donald Trump passed during his time in office. And it basically kind of says a cannabis company can determine their own method of accounting, which includes allocating a significant portion of their costs towards inventory and writing those off as cost of goods sold. So instead of just, you have your sales of your item and you only paid $1,500 for it, you can start allocating, we had to pay payroll, direct costs, we had to pay bud tenders, we had to pay rent for the facility. All of these are direct costs. You can decide that I'm going to allocate all these direct costs into cost. And so instead of having a $1,500 cost, you might have a $2,000 cost or a $2,500 cost against that revenue so that you're able to minimize your taxes. Well, that's something that we're trying to implement with our clients, but we're not really sure if that'll pass or not. We had a conversation with the IRS about that yesterday. So we're partnering with them as they are building the regulations, because we don't want them to just dictate to us, okay, we decided this in our back room, this is how you guys do it. This is a two-way discussion. Like, these laws are now being formed and shaped. So we feel like it's important to speak to these regulators as they are creating these laws, get in front of them, let them know, okay, well, if we pass this law, this is how it's going to look. This is how it's going to affect us. And maybe let's look at this a little bit differently so that we can have something that's more of a win-win. So we've partnered with them. We've partnered with other law firms, Hoban Law Group, which is a cannabis-only law firm, international law firm, to help with the legal aspect, with figuring out what your legal entity structure should look like, and some of the different things that they're seeing in the court of law and what they're fighting and things that they're working with. And then we also are looking to form partners with other associations as far as the AICPA, so that we can start creating that guidance so that this industry can have the industry guides that other industry has, and so that your accountant and the business owner can know and have some type of measure if they're doing things right or if they're doing things wrong. But right now it's kind of like just the wild, wild west. You have accountants out here are doing things based on their background and expertise and experience, but they're doing it their way and based on their interpretation of the guidance and of the laws, and not based on any like overall marijuana guidance.
Yeah, no, I have to say I absolutely love to see that. Partnering with the IRS is so important. Like you said, when it comes to any of these policies, it's very important that they have the actual feedback and insight from people that understand the intricacies of all these things. So that's super dope that you're really leading that. Not surprised, like I said, Black women always doing something big to save us all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just really exciting, and I just saw the need. I mean, there's absolutely a need for this in this industry, and I think this may be the only time in my lifetime where I will have the opportunity to be a part of something that's so big. And a lot of people may not even, it's hard to wrap your mind around how big the cannabis industry is. And I like to think about it. And when I first started, like I think about when the car was first created. So now you have, the Ford Model T, you have this car that's created. Now all of a sudden you need mechanics who can work on this car. So now you've opened up a whole nother skill set and industry. You need tires, you need oil and engines, you need roads. How are you going to drive this car across the country? So now you have people building roads. And then if you're going on a long road trip, you need motels and hotels on the side of those roads for people to sleep and eat, restaurants, during that road trip. You need gas stations on the side of the roads and, convenience stores. And so if you just think about the car, prior to the car being built, there was no industry for any of that. You didn't have people opening convenience stores and motels and different things like that. And that's the same thing with cannabis. Now that we're legalizing this drug, we need special packaging, childproof packaging. We need artists who are creating the artwork on the packaging. We need software that can do, seed to sale software and POS systems and ERPs and things like that. You have to have accountants and electricians to hook up these fancy lights that are going into these grow facilities. And they're paying taxes, they're paying payroll taxes, they're paying payroll. It's one of the biggest job creation engines, and it's still federally illegal. So once it goes federally illegal, now you're going to have cosmetic companies wanting to put this product in their brands. They're already doing it. You're going to have alcohol companies wanting to put this in their brand. You're going to have, the Pepsis and beverage companies and tobacco companies and it's just such a big industry. And to be on the ground floor of this, I just feel like this is just a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I just love every single day of it.
Absolutely. No, you're so right. Like people, we really have to think about the cannabis industry so much bigger than just the plant touching opportunities. That's why it's always dope to highlight people like you that have figured out these other lanes to transfer your, existing professional skills in, because that's the way you get in. Like I love that car example, like you said, because there's just so many different needs for different lanes for people to kind of pick up. And I think it's so important for us to like you said, have the blueprints out there for us to know how to get in the game. But even once we get in, make it a little bit easier. And for you having done this for a couple of years, like what type of advice would you give for, if somebody's an accounting professional right now, just as, a CPA or bookkeeper, and they're thinking like, I want to figure out how to get in this game. What do you think are the first steps that they should take?
Well, absolutely. Number one step is they need to join the association. We have a monthly membership subscription where this is where we're bringing the experts. So this is where we talk with the experts. Like I mentioned, we talk to the IRS directly to the director who is director over examination. So this is the person who's going to come in to your client and see if they're compliant. And so, you'll be tapped into that. We talk to insurance providers. There's a lot of insurance companies that won't insure cannabis businesses because of the risk, but there are insurance providers that will. So you need to know where to go. And then there's also different types of insurance that you need for cannabis companies. Like if you think about it, they're cash heavy. And sometimes, if they do get banking, they may have to drive hours. The closest bank that will actually bank them may be an hour or a couple of hours away. And so transporting large sums of cash hours away, there's risk there. So there's transit insurance that you would need for that. So there's different things that you just may not know. So getting tapped into this association, you'll be able to get connected with attorneys who service cannabis, so you can understand legal entity structure and how to structure some of these contracts, insurance providers, bankers, so that you can understand what it takes to get a bank account for your clients. So it's not just, if you walk into the bank and you walk out with a bank account like any normal person or any normal business. It's a process, and you have to submit background checks and financial reports and tax returns and different things like that. And so it's important that we understand what's required so that we can know what to expect when we go into our client, and we can help them get that bank account quicker. So we talk to bankers, and we talk to even I'm having business owners come on board and talk to the association so that you can understand directly from the mouth of the actual business owner that you potentially could be working with, what they are looking for from their accountant. What are their pain points? What types of issues are they having with previous accountants who aren't cannabis specific? So the association is just a place where you can kind of get your feet wet. You can see what the issues are, what the pain points are, and see what some of the solutions are that we are coming up with as we're working with these companies.
Super dope. And, like I said, and I would love to have, for one tip for you as a business owner, like what's one tip that you would share for other cannabis business owners, whether ancillary, really, I guess ancillary businesses, to grow your business and get to where, you've gotten to.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would recommend that you figure out where you fit in. So if you're a marketing professional, these businesses have trouble. We can't really do a lot of social media marketing and things like that because the word cannabis is banned. You can't put a huge billboard up with somebody smoking a joint because all that stuff is illegal. So they have marketing challenges, they have legal challenges, they have accounting challenges. They need space. They need to find if they're a dispensary, they need to get the best retail location. So if you're a real estate professional, maybe the best places in the city to place these dispensaries and help them get placement. Whatever it is, just think about how you can creatively service this industry, because this is the biggest industry in the country, and it needs everything. It needs people to help them with everything that any other industry needs help with. And so just figure out where you fit, and then make sure that you go out there and get the expertise that you need. So if that's tapping into my association, if that's making sure that you're on the mailing list for MJ Biz Daily or Ganjapreneur, or stay just marijuana moment, just staying abreast and staying in, getting that news daily so that you understand what's going on. And as you get these articles, and as you get more information, ideas will start to trigger in your brain. Like when I started with cannabis, I was servicing cannabis. And then as I got more into, I was servicing cannabis business owners. And as I got more into it and started learning more, I saw opportunities. I saw the opportunity to teach other accountants. And then I saw the opportunity that there needed to be more regulation and there needed to be more guidance in place. And so it kind of evolves from there, but you just have to get started first. And then things will start to just come to you. And one thing that I always like to tell my entrepreneurs, my business owners, the people that ask for advice is you just need to figure out what you want. What do you want your life to look like? What do you want your business to look like? And the how is none of your business. The how will figure itself out. And so, as I mentioned with my story, like I knew I wanted a remote business. I didn't know how it was going to be like that, but I knew I wanted to work from home or from a beach or an island or wherever I was in the world. I wanted to be able to just work from my laptop. And initially, I thought I would need to learn a new skill set. So I went out and started learning other things, but I came up full circle back to accounting, and I'm doing accounting and I'm living the life that I wanted. But if you would have asked me 4 or 5 years ago, I would be on here, right here, talking about cannabis regulation and things, I would have never been able to tell you that that's what it was going to be. I just knew I wanted to be able to work remotely. So figure out what you want, and then things will start to fall in place. You'll start meeting the people that you need to meet. You'll start seeing the information that you need to see in order to get to that goal.
Absolutely, man. That was some great advice. And let us know, what's going on, what's coming up next for you and for the association, and where can people find you and look out for more information.
Yeah, so you can just visit nacatpros.org. So it's the National Association of Cannabis Accounting and Tax Professionals, and it's the acronym is NACAT pros.org. And so right now we do our bi-monthly expert speaker interviews where you get to join live and ask your questions to the different experts who service cannabis, insurance professionals, the IRS, bankers, in actual business owners. And then next month, we are actually in the process of launching a certification program. So we're getting a certification off the ground. It's going to be about a 12-week certification where you can go through and you can become a certified cannabis accounting professional. And I have a network of other cannabis business owners who are looking to hire accountants. However, they want them to have the proper training and background and understand their industry. And so I felt the need for this certification program in order to be able to provide accountants to these business owners that have the knowledge that they need in order to service that industry. So that's what's next. We're launching that next month, and I'm really excited about it. We have some really good information in there. It's a really solid program, and I feel like anybody who's really serious about cannabis need to at minimum join the association, and then become certified if they want to service these businesses.
Absolutely. No. Well, thank you and best of luck with the certifications coming out. That's really going to be dope for people to be able to show that they've, learned and gone through the program and they have the expertise they need to help these businesses. It really is something so important. And thank you for coming through and rapping with me today. It's always a pleasure getting together with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Naomi. Well, I'll see you soon.
All right. Bye.
And peace to everybody for rocking with us today.